My name is Kemi Kale, mother of two. I'm called many things, from troublemaker to ninja mom. I call myself an autism ass kicker. From about 14 months, there was no speech, and you go onto Google, and every time you do a search and it says, oh, autism, you think, maybe not. Then you do a search again, 16 months, no speech, autism. Oh, maybe not. And then after a while, you thought, okay, suck it up, girl. Joined a few Facebook groups, joined some communities to see what was being said, and then went to the doctor well armed with information. And we got an autism diagnosis when he was 2. I think I was born wanting to fight everything. So if things come as a challenge, I think things that come easier sometimes are not as appreciated. Please, God, let things come easier. I don't mean what I just said, but I think it was a challenge, and so it was an accepted challenge that, okay, yes, this is what we have to deal with. I have Nigerian heritage, and in our community, autism is something that is not spoken about. We sort of hide the child, and we say nothing about it. But luckily, I was born by a kick-ass mother who always told me one thing, and he says, if you're silent about whatever is going on around you, silence surrounds you. So I was very comfortable accepting it and speaking about it and saying my son has an autism diagnosis. It was first difficult, actually. I could not say my son was autistic. I would only ever say he had an autism diagnosis, which was foolish. It made no difference to the boy anyway, so I guess it just made me feel better about what I was having to deal with. I had to deal with a lot. I had to deal with people not understanding his attitude, his behavior, and people will roll their eyes and think, oh God, he's so spoiled. And so yes, my baseline fight came out. I remember there was once in church and somebody came and tapped on his shoulder, not mine, his, and because he was looking at his iPad and mumbling to himself, and came to tap on his shoulder. And I remember thinking, you're so lucky we're in church, because I would be in jail by now. So yes, there was a lot we had to fight with. There was a lot of friends who couldn't understand why my focus was this. There were a lot of people who couldn't understand why this was a problem, why this was the focus, basically was the mainstay of my existence. I had to deal with also having an older child who I had to make sure I wasn't neglecting as well. So I had a lot to deal with. He was non-verbal till he was about 5, 6. School. Oh, that was the first battle. I went to view the special needs school of choice, and maybe, again, I'm a woman of strong faith. And on that day, no child spoke. And I thought, I need him to speak. That is the gap. His gap was speech. So if nobody is speaking, how is he going to speak? So we started the mainstream school battle. You have to fill in the schools. But I knew if I filled in a special needs school on my school choice, they will put him in special needs school. So I only put one school on the list. But it was always a battle. You were always explaining and always making sure you were fighting the side of your child. We did notice that on some days where he would come and sort of take a bite out of my sausages, which had gluten in it, you would typically honestly see him bouncing off the walls. So we decided we were going to do a dairy-free and gluten-free diet for him. And when we started that, we noticed the difference. I tell people that the reason I'm here today is Facebook communities or social media communities, where because in the world you don't serendipitously meet people who are like you, and then you go and look for this community of people who have children on the autistic spectrum, and you think, I'm at home, and there are people talking about the same things, and they talk about things, and you think, that's exactly what I've been trying to explain to people who won't understand, but here they definitely understand. What you don't even need to talk a lot. And so the Facebook communities. But I realized again in the Nigerian community where I grew up in, people don't talk about their child. If you have a special needs child, you actually hide the child. Some physically hide. They won't know you have this child. It's just that, didn't you have a child somewhere? But that was because that was a total lack of knowledge. So I set up a Facebook community, I remember, I called it Autism Nigeria. I renamed it after a couple of years to Autism Nigeria and Beyond, where we have parents who come in and talk about their children within that sort of landscape, Nigerian landscape or Nigerian heritage. I set up the community to sort of it was something, again, another thing my mother used to tell me, that you're walking through the fire with water for yourself, but also water for those coming behind, because there was no point in going through this experience and getting all this knowledge and then not sharing it, or bringing people together with knowledge to share with each other. So that was why I set that up. The journey continued, because again, autism is a lifelong journey, a spectrum. I think one thing we have to understand with the spectrum is you might be on one part of the spectrum at certain parts of your life. So you kind of bounce around the spectrum. So it's a learning, every day with autism is a learning experience. You don't heave a sigh of relief and think, I've got this now. Don't ever do that because then the next is like something else. Our something else was ADHD, where he then got an ADHD diagnosis, and he's within this last year. He was getting again autism, male, puberty. Oh gosh, a totally different melting pot of madness and madness and despair on my part. He was totally oblivious to all the pain, and then we noticed he was getting more and more sort of aggressive, with some bullying experiences at school. And now he's on ADHD medication, which again is another different melting pot because then that affects his appetite and he's losing weight. So we're sort of trying to balance it. Yes, he does have some education gaps, but he's still in the mainstream school, 15, and is looking for work experience for summer. He's doing well. He's doing very well. Every child has amazing areas, but I don't want to say he can, when he was younger, he could memorize things and do this, but is that going to pay the bills? So for his future, I know I know there's a path there. This is now mad determined mom, mad mom with faith, many areas. I am so sure for both my children there's a path. It's just making sure we find it. So I'm very positive about the future. It might not be the path that I wanted. It might not be the path that I thought my children would take, but I'm so sure my parents look at me from heaven now and think that's not the path we thought, girl. But we're fine.